Started, I'll just briefly ask Detective Stubbs. Detective Stubbs, did you view any of the trial testimony over the weekend or during the break of this case?
I have not.
Okay, thank you for that acknowledgement. With that in mind then, Ms. Smith, it looks like is conducting direct examination, so you can continue with your direct.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Now, on Friday, we saw a video in which you participated in the search of apartment 175 on Pioneer Road. Do you recall?
I do.
Okay. Did you and other members of that search team also search other apartments on Pioneer Road?
Yes.
Which apartments did you search?
So the next door apartment to 175 was 174. That one was also searched. And apartment 107, which was the next block, next section of apartments over.
Okay. Why did you guys search 174?
174 was Melanie Boudreau's apartment, which is Lori's niece. The feeling was that she knew Lori, and possibly there would be evidence of JJ being in that apartment or some evidence of that as well.
Okay. And why did you search 107?
107 was, the lease was for Lori actually in 107. However, she was living in 175, so that again, where her name was on it, we felt like we needed to look at that apartment as well.
You said she was living in 175, but whose name was on the lease in 175?
That would be Alex Cox.
So, just to make sure I understand, 107 had Lori's name on it.
Yes.
But she was living in the apartment under her brother's name.
Correct.
Okay. So when you were searching 174, did you see any electronic devices in Melanie Boudreau's apartment?
Yes, there were several.
Okay. Did you see any credit cards or driver's license information that captured your attention?
Yes, there was a, if you will, binder inserts that had several credit cards with not only Melanie, but her ex-husband's credit cards and driver's license.
Okay. When you say had several, were there multiple credit cards?
Multiple.
And when you say ex-husband, do you mean Brandon Boudreau?
I do.
Okay. So in Melanie's apartment, there were multiple things connected to Brandon Boudreau.
Yes.
And at the time you were doing the search, were you aware that Brandon Boudreau had been the victim of an attempted shooting?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I asked you earlier on Friday about your certifications regarding electronic data, computer, and cell phone forensics. Can you remind us what your training and experience is with regard to searching and obtaining electronic data?
So, since about 2010, somehow I got awarded to be able to do electronic devices, so forth. So what that entails is I've attended multiple trainings in various forensic softwares that allow me to take a device and, if you will, look deeper into it than you really can with just, say, a normal computer or normal software.
Okay. So it requires specific training and programs to look at. It's not just as simple as pulling up your Windows Explorer.
Right. Yes.
Do you have any idea of how many electronic devices you've analyzed in connection to your job?
It would be hundreds of devices over the years.
Okay. Now, in order to search an electronic device, do you have to obtain search warrants?
Yes.
Why do you have to obtain search warrants?
Well, it's people's right to privacy, and you have to have probable cause to take those items and, if you will, search them much like you would have to have a search warrant for a home or something else.
Okay. And so when you're writing those search warrants, are you looking for specific types of information?
Say that again.
When you're writing search warrants, are you looking for certain types of information stored on those devices?
Okay, thank you. Yes.
What sort of information can you find?
Well, in today's age, electronics is most of our lives, and so any communications, photos, emails, transactions of any kind would most likely be on a device of someone who uses them on a daily basis.
So apps or programs like Google or Fitbit, do those also store their data on those devices?
So those are exterior programs, and to a point, yes, they will store things on your phone. However, the second part of that would have to be that, if you will, whether it's Google, Facebook, whatever you are looking at, they have their own servers so that they keep track of what you do through their services.
So in searching a device, you look at what's on that device.
Correct.
But then if you see they have Google, then do you have to do anything else in order to get information from Google?
Yes. So if we find Google accounts, if you will, or any kind of account, we can take that information that we find and we can write additional warrants to those other establishments, if you will, and request the information that they are storing really on all of us.
So when we talk about electronic search warrants, it's the device, and then you write to the company for any of the apps the person has.
Yeah, for any of the data they're storing on people.
Okay. And have you done such warrants to Google or Fitbit or, Amazon, those sort of warrants?
Yes, I've done a lot of these different companies that we're all familiar with.
Okay. And earlier, the state admitted a bunch of certified business records. When you get a search warrant from something like Google or Amazon or Venmo, they return data to you, right?
Yes, they return quite a bit of data, and I think they also send you what's called a certification of the records, which is whoever their representative is from, say, Google. They give you if you will, affidavit saying that everything they're giving you is a true and accurate copy of what is being stored on their system with that particular user.
So they send you the records and sort of an affidavit saying the records we're giving you are the answer to your search warrant.
Yes, and that they're true and accurate from what they have.
Okay. And so when you ask for that information, do they only give you part of the records, or do they give you what you ask for in your search warrant?
So most generally, it is what you have asked for in your warrant that they'll give you.
So in connection into the investigation to what happened to either Tylee, JJ, or Tammy, did you prepare any such electronic search warrants?
Yes, several.
Okay. How many?
Probably 20 to 21.
Okay. In anticipation of your testimony, did you prepare a summary list of those search warrants to help you explain the search warrants you obtained to the jury and to talk about their results?
Yes.
Okay. And I'd ask that the witness be shown State's Exhibit 296, previously given to the court and defense counsel.
Very well.
I'd like to see it.
I don't believe the court has a courtesy copy, it would appear.
Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor. That was... Judge, do you have the copy?
I do.
Okay. Detective Stubbs?
Yes.
Did you look at States 296?
Yes.
What is it?
It is a summary of the warrants that I wrote for, whether they be to provider or for devices themselves,
Okay. In this particular case?
in this case.
Okay. Your Honor, I request permission for the admission of States Exhibit 296 and to display it for the jury to aid this witness in explaining his testimony.
Any objection from the defense?
May I voir dire native objection?
Yes.
Detective, you just testified earlier. The state asked you how many search warrants you did. This is a cumulative list of every search warrant that you did for those electronic devices?
I believe so.
Okay.
Well, not just electronic devices, but providers as well.
Okay. You indicated that you did either 20 or 21. Is that correct?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. How many warrants are on this list?
If you look down 3/4 of the way, there's 2 warrants, 76 and 77, that are on the same line.
Okay. All right. Your Honor, I have no objection.
Okay. Exhibit 296 is admitted.
And do I have permission to display, Your Honor?
Yeah, and let's make sure we have the original exhibit to the witness. I had your copy you provided, I think.
Oh, and that's okay. I can use the original so that the court has theirs.
All right, let's just make sure the witness gets that original so it's marked and goes into the record.
Your Honor, all the copies had an exhibit sticker on them, so the witness had the original.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Can you see that? Can you see that?
Yes, I
Okay.
can see that.
All right. Your Honor, could the court inquire, can the jurors see that?
Looks like they can.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now let's move this over here. All right. Detective, what is search warrant 2019-77?
So that was a warrant that we wrote for a particular phone number. It was to Verizon Wireless, and we were requesting the records that they had with this particular phone number. This number was a number we known to belong to Lori Vallow. She had been contacted on this phone previously. This is the number that they called when we went and visited her at her apartment.
And what about search warrant 2019-86?
This was a warrant that we gathered when we gathered additional information on, if you see in the blue, these additional email addresses that we believe to be associated with the parties in this case to Google.
Okay. We'll come back to that one because there were multiple email addresses served on the request for Google, right?
Right.
Okay. But Google issued a return and provided you a lot of data.
Mass amount of data, yes.
Okay. And did you review that data?
Parts of it, yes.
Okay. And then was all of that data also supplied to other analysts and investigators on this case?
Yes, because of the size of the data that they gave us. If you will, we distributed it between myself and other investigators in this case.
Okay. And so that is also reflected, Your Honor, in the certified business record that's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit 107, and just for the court's reference. Now, what's the next search warrant? 2020-07?
Correct.
Did I read that right? What was that for?
So this was, again, to Verizon due to a search warrant that other officers had obtained for a P.O. box in a neighboring city, Sugar City, if you will. There was a bill found in some of that mail. There was a Verizon bill with, as you can see, the account number on here. Had a list of 18 phones associated with that bill.
Okay. And that account was in the name of who?
Would have been Lori.
Okay. Lori Vallow.
Lori Vallow, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. And then moving to the next one, we'll also come back to that one. That's another business record. 2020-09. Tell us about that search warrant.
So when the parties had, when they vacated apartment 175 and didn't return, the, if you will, landlords went in to clean out the apartment. There was quite a bit of stuff left in there, and they, while they were cleaning out, they came upon two phones that were abandoned, and then they just surrendered those to us.
Okay.
And
then, I'm sorry, and so you did a search warrant for those as well?
Yes.
Okay. So I apologize. Was that 2020-09?
Yes.
Okay. Was that a search warrant on Google?
Yes. So because we took the devices and we were able to open them and find that there were, again, these two email addresses associated on those phones.
Okay. And what were those two email addresses?
RayLamar@gmail.com and HomerJMaximus@gmail.com, both associated with Alex Cox.
And what about the search warrant for 2020-15?
So if I may explain a little bit more on these, it's going to be the next really three. We took numbers that we were able to associate with the parties in this case, not knowing the whereabouts of where the parties had gone to. We took these numbers and we requested a pen, tap, and trace on these, which would allow us to try and locate the phones in live time, so we could find out basically where these phones were, if they were on and active, to try and track down where the parties were.
Okay. And these are various known numbers of which parties?
This would be Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, Chad Daybell, Tylee Ryan.
And you said it's the next three, so that would be 2020-15, 2020-20, and 2020-21?
Right, and you'll notice some of those numbers are associated with one particular carrier being Verizon, another carrier being T-Mobile, The reason for this is you have to apply, if you will, to each of the carriers for that. I will point out, if you look on 2015, I made a note here that there was a typo on 9347 in the 15 warrant. Those numbers got switched, therefore we wrote a new warrant for that single number to Verizon, switching the numbers as they should be back to 7-4.
So if there's a typo in the warrant, you have to resubmit it.
Yeah, the carrier will say we don't recognize that number, and so when we saw that and they had told us that they don't recognize the number, we revisited it and found that we had switched those two numbers on the warrant.
Okay. And did that tap and trace yield any results?
In part, yes. Some of the phones were not active at that time, but yes, we did get some locations.
Okay. And did that, what locations did you get in general?
Basically, it led us to locating the devices in, if you will, Kauai, Hawaii.
Okay. Whose devices were located in Kauai, Hawaii?
The device that we knew belonged to Tylee Ryan and Chad and Lori.
Now, moving on, let's talk about search warrant 2020-25.
Okay. So these are 10 devices that when the parties were located in Hawaii and they were talked to in Hawaii, these 10 devices under warrant were seized from the vehicle that they were occupying or using in Kauai.
And so you wrote search warrants for those devices recovered in the car?
Yes.
Okay. And then what about 2020-30?
That was another number that we asked for a pen tap and trace on.
Whose number was that?
I'm drawing a blank on whose that was. It was one of the parties involved.
Okay. And then 2020-31? What's that one?
Excuse me. Again, these were from our original search warrant when we went on the 27th of November into the homes. These were devices that were seized out of apartment 174, which would have been Melanie Boudreau's apartment.
And search warrant 2020-46?
These would be the two numbers associated with the above, the Samsung and the LG phones that we wrote to Verizon Wireless.
And what about 2020-53?
So this is a warrant that we wrote, I believe. So there was when items were seized out of the car in Kauai, there was a notebook that had several, almost a whole page of email addresses, phone numbers, and such. And then we took those and wrote warrants for those Gmail accounts as well.
And then what about 2020-61? I'm moving that up.
So this is a provider, if you will, social media type provider. They mostly deal with music, and we found an account, a couple of accounts for Lori and Alex. So we wrote to them. They responded and said that they had the, if you will, the user names or the people who own the accounts, but they don't store any data, and so they didn't really have anything to return to us.
Now, why would you look at their music accounts?
Well, just because there's an email account associated with someone, usually when you open up a new, say, email or whatever, you have to put your information, such as your name, contact information to some degree, whether it's phone numbers, your actual name, things like that, when you set up an account.
So I'm hoping I can get this down far enough. 2020-74.
Okay, so this warrant this would have come into play after we found the children's bodies on the Daybell property. The goal in getting this warrant was we were trying to be very specific on where these devices, if you will, pinging, if you will, their locations. And so this warrant was drawn up so we could get back onto the Daybell property. I was working with members of the FBI on this, and they wanted to get specific readings on all parts of the property for their signal strength so they could be precise in what they were doing.
So I know we're going to have members of the FBI testify later on some of this data, but when you say pinging, what does that mean?
So to be real brief on this, because I think this will be brought up in more detail. So your phones have three ways that they'll communicate with either cell towers, satellites, or something. So you've got GPS signals that will signal and show, if you will, Google or whoever. You've got a GPS signal that will hit your device and show your location. You've got, and that would be the most reliable of all these types. The second would be a Wi-Fi signal. A Wi-Fi signal is a router, whether it be in your home, your business, or somebody else's. So basically, in a nutshell, if you were in a building, this is just an example, if you're in a building where you have never hooked up to the Wi-Fi before, your phone will see a Wi-Fi signal, say, in a public building or a library or whatever, and it will do what's called a handshake. Now, that doesn't mean it hooks up to it, but that means the two will handshake and recognize each other. And so that, again, will draw, if you will, a location. And then the third would be a cellular signal, which is a signal from a cell tower, and we've all seen cell towers, that it will communicate to that cell tower and give a somewhat precise location.
So you wrote a search warrant to be able to get sort of this data. Is it what they commonly call geolocation data?
Yes.
Okay. So to get geolocation data on these numbers from various entities, including Google.
Correct.
Okay. And then you obtained that information and reviewed it, correct?
Yes. Now, like I said before, some of this work had been distributed between FBI, myself, and others, because it was a vast amount. So,
we're talking hundreds of thousands of records.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay. And so moving from 2020-74, I think we started to talk about 2020-76 and 77. Is that what's a geofence?
So again, this has to do with locating devices that are giving off locations. And so, again, these two were after the bodies were found on the Daybell property. The goal in this warrant was to take 250-meter range from the center of, would be Chad Daybell's property, and that would be the 202 North, 1900 East. So basically, if you would drop a pin in the middle of his property and then make a circle 250 meters out, which roughly would be 2.5 football fields. And then you did the same at 565 Pioneer Road at the center of Lori's apartment and ballooned it out as well. We asked Google for any devices that would be within that fence, that circular fence of 250 meters. And we wanted to know every device that they could give us during certain time frames on key dates, so that we could see any additional devices that were moving or were in common with these two locations during these September 8th and September 9th and September 22nd and 23rd, which is the times we believe these murders occurred.
And did you get a return from Google on that data?
So, yes, we did get a return, which, as you can imagine, in a country setting, there wouldn't be as many, but like in a city where people are driving up and down the roads all the time, it was a mass amount.
Okay. Why did you do that? If you already had the geolocation data for Chad and Lori and Alex, why would you do the geofence?
So, to explain this, we wanted to make sure that we weren't leaving anybody out that may be involved in this. So our theory in this was to gather all information we could of anyone else that maybe we didn't know about that could be involved in this. And so this was a way of taking all these devices that would fall inside this fence and be common to all these areas and be able to see if there was anybody else that we needed to be looking at besides the parties that we've already mentioned.
And did you find any?
So we didn't. We never found anybody that would be in common with both locations on both dates for any extended amount of time. In fact, none of the other devices we saw, other than the device of Alex Cox, had common date, times, and so forth as his did.
Okay. Hoping you can see this. I might do this. Sorry about that. Let's get to the bottom of the page. Make sure that's in focus. What about 2020-83? What is that search warrant?
So because up higher there was the 20, you see in my notes there, 2020-53, we had,
This one.
hold on, you're making me dizzy.
Sorry.
So we had wrote for these particular Gmail accounts, like I said, that we had found in the binder found in the car. We never got a response from them for whatever reason. I don't know if it was during the time of COVID and things ran a lot slower then. Anyway, so we never got a response. So I rewrote.
I'm moving it so don't get dizzy.
Okay, all right.
There you go. Warning.
We rewrote for this the same thing because we never got a response. And this particular warrant for those Gmail accounts, they responded to.
And you received that data as well?
Yes.
Okay. And did you share that data on all those Gmail accounts as well?
Yes.
Pretty much all the data that you've received for all of these search warrants were shared with multiple agencies and multiple investigators working on this.
Yes.
What about 2021-10?
So, okay, to look at this one, and I hope I don't confuse people. When we wrote for that geofence warrant, for any devices that fall within that 250 meters, Google doesn't just return and say, okay, this device belongs to Jane Doe, this device John Doe. They don't tell you all the names and everything. So what they want you to do, they send you what it's called Google device IDs. And that is, if you will, a serial number associated with that account. So when they responded to the geofence warrant, they respond with a whole bunch of serial numbers of people. You don't know who these people are. What they would like you to do, because the data is so mass, is they want you to go through and map out the devices that came from that warrant first. Meaning, we take all the numbers and we put them in a system, and we eliminate any that had nothing to do with anything. They might have been cruising down the road and they pinged one time, and then the next time they're 200 yards further, and you can tell they're going down a road. But then, so what you do is you take all that massive data, all those serial numbers, if you will, and you narrow it down. So it could be a few hundred, and they want you to narrow that down. So what we did is we took the locations, if you will, and then we felt like there were 12 devices that we would like to have a better look at, and who those people were. So that's where this warrant comes in, where we say, hey, Google, we would like to know now from these 12 serial numbers who these people actually are. And then during this time, we didn't receive the information for them, so we then wrote 2021-20, if I may. Is that okay?
Absolutely, please.
And then we asked, after looking at it further, there were 10 devices that we wanted to know the individuals associated with those, if you will, serial numbers and Google accounts.
And that's the eliminations items you talked about?
Yeah, that's we had eliminated down to these 10.
Okay. And what about 2020-01?
So this is a warrant that we wrote. So we took a lot of the devices that myself, the FBI, other agencies had, if you will, examined, and we decided we would want independent expert to go through some of these devices. And so we got with this Glenn Baird, and he's out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this is a warrant that we wrote for those devices to take these physical devices to him to have him analyze them as well.
So let's talk about some of the specific devices. 2020-77, the last, I think you told us that was the last known number of that you had originally of Lori Vallow. Did you obtain location information for location services?
Yes, some of which we did receive. Yes.
Okay. Why were you looking again for location services for Ms. Vallow in December of 2019?
Well, due to the fact that the last communication that we had with her was on the 26th of November. When we returned on the 27th with the search warrant for the apartments, it appeared to me that, you know, if you remember the video, that everything in the home was pretty much in place. However, the clothes and stuff were missing in it, and they had left, if you will, in haste, it appeared to me. We had reached out to try and get a hold of Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, Alex Cox, and were unsuccessful. And so, you know, the next thing for us to want to do is try and find out where they went.
And were you able to get information at that point on that search warrant in December of 2019?
We did there, and with other search warrants as well.
Okay. And that's the information you gave us about Hawaii?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I believe you did the search warrant 2019-86 in December of 2019. Did I get that right? Okay. Now, that was the Google information on various phone numbers and emails, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's been previously admitted as State's Exhibit 107, certified business records. But the state has a specific page for various emails and phone numbers marked State's Exhibit 107A. May I ask that the witness be given 107A, please, Your Honor?
Yes.
Previously given to defense counsel in the court.
Thank you.
Sergeant, do you recognize 107A?
I do.
What is it?
It was an attachment to the warrant 2019-86. It was, it's been remarked now, but it was in that warrant as an attachment.
Okay. And it was served on Google and as part of their records?
Yes.
Okay. It was a document that you had originally prepared and given to Google. Is that correct?
Yes, myself and the FBI had prepared this.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd request permission to admit States 107A and display it and publish it for the jury.
All right, I'm just checking.
Those were
You
given
indicated it was previously admitted, and now you're moving to admit.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what, Your Honor, we have been doing it. We did the entire 107. This is the subpage of 107A. Okay. So if I don't need to admit and I can just publish, that's fine.
I think the records are indicated that it was previously admitted.
Great. Well, it's double admitted then, I guess. Sorry, Judge. Thank you. Now, we're not going to go through every one of these, but are these the various emails?
Counsel, we need to sort this out for a minute, if you would. Could you
Sure.
remove that from the projector?
Sure.
And let me discuss briefly with the clerks here. All right, Ms. Smith, let's have a quick sidebar with counsel just to discuss the management of exhibits. Thank you. You can be seated. We'll take it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take an impromptu morning break here. We had a juror that needed a break for a moment, and we need to sort out the exhibits. So we'll go ahead and have I don't know if this will be we might take another recess a little later, but we'll take a quick recess now with those circumstances to follow up on the exhibits and also allow the juror to be accommodated. So we'll be on a break. Thank you. Please be seated. We can have the jurors brought back.
There's just.
I do have it now. Thank you, Counselor.
Counsel, there's not a 107B, is there? No. Okay.
Just while we're waiting, Ms. Smith, on those exhibits, so we went through the list of what was admitted, a substantial list last week, and where there are any sub-exhibits on any of those numbers, that's where it's probably worth checking with the clerk.
Yeah, the next one is 127A, and then there won't be sub-exhibits for any of the others.
Okay.
And you should have that courtesy copy up there.
I do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Three's all present, count of 4, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, Ms. Smith, you can continue with your examination.
And just to make sure that 107A is up on the witness stand, do you need him to identify it, or does the court have its copy?
I have a copy.
Okay, great. May I have 107A back, please? Sergeant, I know you said earlier before the break, I'll get it focused and quit moving it on you. Okay. What is this again, just so the record's clear for the jurors?
So when I wrote the warrant, this was an attachment, if you will, to that original warrant of names, numbers, email addresses, and stuff things that we were able to associate with people who were involved with Lori.
Okay. And then you put this in, and it ended up as part of the Google records, and then they gave you a return on the records they have associated with all of this.
Correct.
Okay. There's some highlights on this sheet. Why are those highlighted?
Well, partly because if you look on the right, Melanie Boudreau, Alex Cox, Lori Vallow with 2, Tylee Ryan with 2 different numbers, and then at the lower, these, as our investigation continued, there were some phones that we continued to come up that somehow, well, not somehow, but came in association with other numbers and other email accounts. So some of these, for lack of a better word, we attributed to calling burner phones.
Okay. What's a burner phone?
Well, it's a phone that you can go to, say, Walmart, Target, whatever, and you can. It's like a pay phone. You just pay as you go type phone, and it's sometimes it's really limited in use. It's a, if you will, in drug work, it's a common phone that is used by people distributing illegal drugs, so they can't have their number changed or number tracked and so forth. So we call them burner or drop phones.
Okay. And so some of the numbers on this list that Google returned documents on were things that you know, law enforcement calls a burner phone, but it had attributed to either Chad or Lori or Melanie Boudreau or Alex Cox.
Yeah, a lot of times when people get when people get these types of phones, they still will access, say, Google accounts or other things that. So these companies keep track, and if you use a device and you log on to, say, one of your common accounts or whatever, they'll associate all of it together, and so they kind of keep a web of everything, so they can associate what you're using and connect it, whether it's a computer, a cell phone, a tablet. They'll connect it all.
So each new device, regardless of what phone number it is, if you log into your Google account or you log into your Outlook account, gets associated at Outlook or at Google, even though the phone number is different.
Yes, it'll connect.
Okay. And so this request that was served on, this was the Google list, one of the Google list. All these numbers were numbers that you requested and had associated with some of the people involved in this case and got returns from and data from Google.
That's correct.
All right. Okay. Now, on that list, there was, let me put that back up there, I changed my mind. Homer J. Maximus, whose email was that?
So when we received the return, as I before mentioned, usually you have to put a subscriber, your name or phone number, things that, anyway. Homer J. Maximus, when we got the return, came back to Alex Cox.
Okay. And did the return on the Homer J. Maximus account also include various types of data associated with Homer J. Maximus?
Yes.
Including location data?
Yes.
Including messaging data?
Yes.
Okay. Emails?
Yes.
Search history?
Yes.
Okay. And a lot of that data you shared with other agencies, including FBI analysts.
Correct.
And the CAST unit?
The CAST unit, yes.
What's CAST? What is that group?
It's the acronym, I hope I get this right, Cellular Analysis Systems Team.
Okay. Their job is to drill down and look at this data as well.
So they have usually specific data that they're looking for locations.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier doing a different warrant for specific location data on the property. Was it to aid that same team?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Now, did you also receive a return on the Lori for Style at iCloud.com?
Yes.
Okay. And was that data not only reviewed by your team, but other analysts for review?
Yes.
Okay. What about Lally Time Forever at Gmail?
Yes. That one was also received and gone through.
Okay. And you went through Lolly Time Forever as well?
I did.
Okay. And we can circle back to that in a minute. Did you also look at the chad.daybell@gmail.com that was on that list?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get a chance to look at that chaddaybell@gmail.com, and was it associated with Chad Daybell involved in this situation?
Yes, the username associated with it was Chad Daybell.
Did you have a chance to look at Chad Daybell's search history?
Yes.
Okay. And why would you look at someone's search history?
Well, to get clues on, like I said, we're looking for children, whether they were looking for hotels or plane reservations or anything that would help us try and locate these children.
Okay. Your Honor, may I hand the witness, or have the witness handed State's Exhibit 157, which is a thumb drive he prepared?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you get a chance to look at that, Sergeant?
I have.
Okay. What is it?
It's a USB thumb drive.
Okay. What is on that thumb drive?
That would be, in part, some of Chad's, from the chad.daybell search history.
Okay. And did you prepare that and look at it before coming into court today?
Yes.
Okay. And is it a true and accurate of the Google search history portions for September 8th and 9th and surrounding dates for Chad Daybell search history associated with chad.daybell@gmail.com?
Yes.
Okay. Move for the admission for State's Exhibit 157.
Any objection? You may.
Can you please pull out Exhibit 157 for me? You said it's a thumb drive?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And how is it that you identified that thumb drive as the thumb drive that is what it purports to be?
Because prior to coming in here, I viewed this thumb drive.
And what happened to the envelope in the thumb drive?
What happened to the envelope in the thumb drive?
Where did you give it back to somebody?
Yes.
Who'd you give it to?
I gave it back to the prosecution.
All right. And did you put your name on the thumb drive to make sure that was the same thumb drive that was given to you?
No.
I mean, it's a white thumb drive, right?
Correct.
How is it that you're positive that this is the white thumb drive that you had?
Well, the writing appears to be the same as on State's Exhibit 157.
The writing appears to be the same?
The number 157 on the exhibit appears to be the same as what I looked at earlier.
You took specific notice of how the handwriting was on 157 when you looked at the thumb drive?
Well, it appears to be the same.
The same as what?
The same lettering, the same numbers.
157?
Correct.
Okay. And that's how you're identifying that as being the specific thumb drive that you reviewed?
That's correct.
Okay. And you don't know if it's been altered or changed since the time that you viewed what you believe to be is Exhibit 157?
I haven't viewed it since I viewed it downstairs.
All right. And I'm going to object based on the fact that I don't think that he has personal knowledge of what is actually on this drive.
May I ask a quick question, Your Honor?
You may.
You had previously prepared that for another proceeding, correct?
Correct.
And in that previous proceeding, it had a State's Exhibit number 80 on it, didn't
Correct.
it?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see the previous exhibit sticker sticking underneath of it?
I can.
And does that say Exhibit 80 on that as well?
Yes.
And we just put a new exhibit sticker on top of it for this trial.
That's right.
Move for the admission of State's Exhibit 157.
All right. Well, on this exhibit, on this, particular exhibit, the thumb drive contains information which the detective has laid a foundation for, and through previously admitted other documents would be able to be part of the evidence of the case. So I wouldn't sustain an objection there. Because of the objection raised, I'll provisionally admit the exhibit, and then I'll just instruct the witness that if what you're being shown differs in any way from the data that you believe would be on this disk or thumb drive, in other words, if it's not the same data you think's on that disk, then you're advised to notify the court or counsel that we don't have the correct thumb drive. Other than that, really the evidence is what's contained in the digital file on the drive. So I'll allow for the witness to be able to view the file that's on the drive, and if it's not what you think it is, then advise the court or counsel. So with that, the objection's overruled.
Sergeant, you looked at that, you double-checked it this morning, right?
I did.
Okay. And it's part of the Google records that have previously been admitted in State's Exhibit 107?
Yes.
All right. So just to talk to us about it, did you look at Chad Daybell's search history for the date of September 8th of 2019?
Yes, I did.
Why'd you do that?
Well, it was around the time that the at least Tylee Ryan had gone missing, and so we were looking around those specific dates to see if we could find any clues as to what would help us locate the children.
Okay. And what did you find when you looked at his search history?
One thing that I found was that on the 8th, in the afternoon hours, the user of this account, the owner of the account was Chad Daybell. The user of this account looked up what the wind direction was going to be for the next day.
And the next day would be September 9th of 2019?
That's correct.
Okay. Did that have any significance to you as an investigator?
It did, because of other things that I had learned, and that that is the day that Chad Daybell had said he was going to burn limbs and killed a raccoon in his yard.
Okay. And he did a wind search on September 8th.
That's right. And the wind search reflected the wind was going to be south-southwest.
Now, let's talk about the search warrant you did on January 15th for the Verizon numbers accounts for that you received for Lori and Charles Vallow. Let me, up on your witness stand, I think we did that at the break, is State's Exhibit 127A. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
This would be the bill that was taken from the P.O. box in Sugar City, containing various numbers, mostly all family members of the Vallow and Cox family.
Okay. And that exhibit was attached to your the subpoena you served on Verizon?
Yes.
Or the grand jury search warrant you returned on, the search warrant you returned on Verizon?
Yes, it was an attachment.
Okay. And then it came back with their records?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to display State's Exhibit 127A, which has been admitted as part of 127, Your Honor.
All right. Before we do that, Ms. Smith, have you moved on from Exhibit 157?
Yes, at this point, yes.
As I understand, the objection that was made in my ruling was dependent on him confirming, on your witness confirming that the file was the same, so I still haven't admitted 157 pending an observation by the witness that in fact the file is correct based on the objection raised. So if you
and I took that from the court that we would have him look at that at the break. I didn't think you wanted him to do it in the courtroom. We certainly can, because he's got to plug it into a laptop, and so I assumed that would happen at a break. I can certainly have him stop and do it now if you'd like.
With your laptop there, is he able to just view and confirm that in fact the file is correct?
Sure.
Why don't we just take a moment if you can do that, and I'll allow you to approach with your
Thank you.
laptop.
May I approach as well, Judge?
You may. Yes, Mr. Thomas.
Do you want to close out my questions?
Yeah, I'll just reduce them down. I'll just watch you if you want to. Well, it just usually comes up on that.
No, I have that shut down.
Oh, okay.
Here.
I'll put it on the record in a second. So no.
Looks like there's two separate files. If you go to the next one, there's two separate files.
The way Google returns it is it returns the letter they give you. It was given to you in Discovery Council, but they give you the account information, they give you the letter and the service information, which was on the first part, and then they give you the actual data in a second section. Here's search warrant response letter. It's an exact copy of what you have in Discovery. Here's the Google response. Here's the data, and here's the account.
I think we need to do a sidebar.
Is that
Well, in lieu of a sidebar, let's go ahead and go back on the record, and you can lodge your objection if there is one, Mr. Thomas. Okay, we're going to go back on the record. We had a quick, not a sidebar there, but I allowed the prosecution to show the file to the witness who's on the stand, Detective Stubbs, on Exhibit 157, and allowed counsel, Mr. Thomas, to view that as well to confirm what is on the jump drive before the jump drive is admitted into evidence. So, Mr. Thomas, were you able to view the contents of that jump drive briefly?
I was, Your Honor.
Do you have any furthering objection?
I do, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Your Honor, I believe the court was requesting that we put one file per jump drive so that when the jury gets the jump drives, there's only one file to look at. It looks like there are a number of envelopes or a number of folders inside that file.
All right. Madam Prosecutor, what's your response there?
It is the court's request was that we not have multiple records from multiple agencies on one jump drive. This is the Google search history associated with, and the records associated with the chad.daybell@gmail.com. And that was the return for that information, including the search history. If the state or the witness were to start sort of taking apart that particular email account, we would have a real completeness issue. It is not the entirety of the Google return for the 18 or 20 emails they did and the multiple phone numbers. It's all of the chad.daybell@gmail.com information and the certificate of service from Google and the account record to show user information. So this is slightly different than what the court had ruled, and to kind of tear apart that, I would worry about an appellate record down the road. It's specific to that email, and it's the state's information is specific to, and request is specific to the search history.
Okay, and before I allow any response from Mr. Thomas, I'll just indicate, so I didn't necessarily have a ruling on exhibits. I did want to have noted in the record before electronic storage devices like jump drives are just given to the jury precisely what's on there, since they will have an opportunity to open those up, and we need to fully disclose the contents of any of those drives. So it's not necessarily a rule that one file per drive on some of those video files and other things.
Right.
That makes sense. Here, if there's an explanation to tie them together, I think in order obviously to offer the exhibit, knowing that it will go in to the jury and they need to know, or defense needs to know what all is on there before they get it, then on this one and in future offerings of exhibits that have those electronic files, I would need you to identify precisely what's contained on the jump drive, just so that in the record's clear for the defense to also see what's being proffered. So with that in mind, the other files that are on there, I believe you've now identified those, and were those all previously disclosed through to the defense in the discovery process?
Yes, Judge. They've been given in multiple forms, both when the large Google account was turned over, also when the exhibits from prior hearings, it's Exhibit 80 from a previous event, and that specific thumb drive, that is the state's copy of the thumb drive that was used at a previous hearing, and the defense got copies of all of those exhibits.
All right. Well,
Close to 2 years ago.
with that, then, Mr. Thomas, any further response on your objection on Exhibit 157?
No, Your Honor, if the court's satisfied that the jury is going to get the appropriate information, then I'm satisfied as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. So with that, then, Exhibit 157 is admitted. And then again, if we have data stored on these drives, Ms. Smith or any of the other prosecutors, please just make sure we identify what's on those drives as they get offered.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
And just as a quick clarification, the state had asked the witness that it's the information associated with the chad.gmail.com. You want more detail than that. I just want to make sure we do it the way you want.
I just want to know what files are on there so that we don't think there's just a single file and then the jurors open a jump drive and there's multiple files that maybe the defense was not aware were being admitted.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
So moving on to State's Exhibit 127, the Verizon account. Have you had a chance to look at State's Exhibit 127A?
I have.
Okay. And is that a true and accurate listing of the items that you had sent to Verizon, including phone numbers that you requested records for?
Yes.
Permission to display State's Exhibit 127A, Your Honor?
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
All right. Exhibit 127A can be published.
Sergeant, there are multiple records on this. Do you see any accounts or items associated with Lori Vallow?
Yes, I do.
Okay. and the various numbers that are included in this one include multiple phone numbers for Lori Vallow, correct?
Correct.
And multiple phone numbers for who else?
There were multiple phone numbers for Charles Vallow as well.
Okay. And when we received the return on those search warrants, did we receive the information and data associated with those phone numbers?
Yes.
And was that information and data associated with all those phone numbers in State's Exhibit 127A also supplied to other investigators for analysis?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, earlier you mentioned that on your review of the Google search warrant that you had looked at the lollytimeforever@gmail account. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, is this one of the accounts that you specifically personally looked at?
Yes.
Okay. Did you find anything of note in this investigation?
Yes. In reviewing the lollytimeforever@gmail.com, this email address was associated with Lori Vallow.
Did you look at her search history?
Yes.
Did you see anything of note around August 25th of 2019?
August 5th?
25th.
25th, yes. I thought you said 5th, sorry. August 25th, 2019, the user of this account looked for malachite wedding rings made of malachite. Also went to a website where the user of this account ordered an 11.5 size ring and a 4.25 malachite ring for I think the total was $808 and some change.
Now, why did this catch your attention?
Well, it caught my attention. Number one, Charles had died in July. We had information that Chad and Lori were seeing each other, but yet Chad was still married to his wife Tammy at that time. So we were thinking it was kind of odd for them to be looking, or for her to be looking at wedding rings at that time.
And I may have missed it, so forgive me. Did the warrant return any names as the account owner or the account holder?
Yes, the account holder was Lori Vallow.
Okay. And so you saw that search. Did you see any searches in that search history associated with Lori Vallow at the beginning of September that were of interest to you?
So there were two searches that got my attention in September. The first would have been on the 20th, where the user of the account looked up the definition of possessed.
Okay. And you said there were two. What was the other search?
The other one would have been on the 30th, where the user of the account searched for how to remove the rear seat of my Jeep Wrangler, and then that person accessed a YouTube video and to watch how to remove the seat of the said Jeep.
Okay. And that was you said September 30th of 2019?
Yes.
Why did that catch your attention?
It caught my attention because of the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux a couple days later.
Did you find any searches in October of interest?
Yes. October 22nd, the user of this account looked for wedding dresses in Kauai, Hawaii.
Why did this catch your attention?
Due to the fact that we knew Chad and Lori had been involved at this point, what also caught my attention was this was being looked at the same day Tammy's funeral was.
Did you see anything in the search history from November that caught your attention?
I'm not sure on this particular.
Okay. Did you look at any of the account history and search information related to any potential travel plans?
Well, there were multiple travel plans.
Were there any specific travel plans that caught your attention?
Travel to and from Hawaii. Different airlines.
Okay. Any other travel within the United States that caught your attention?
On November 5th.
Okay. What was that?
Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on that one.
That's okay. Were there searches for any travel at or near on October 9th, 2019?
October 9th, yes.
What was that?
Travel to, I believe, Illinois.
Okay. Why was October 9th of interest to you?
It was the day that Tammy was reported shot at her residence.
Okay. And the travel was did you have any information that in October of 2019, Lori and Melanie Boudreau and others traveled to anywhere?
Yes.
Where did they go?
Illinois.
Okay. What city? Do you remember?
I should remember this. I know they were visiting LDS church sites out there, Adamon, things like that.
And what did you call it? I'm sorry.
It was called Adam on Diamond.
Okay. And is that in Missouri or is that in Illinois?
Sorry, that's in Missouri.
Okay.
Judge, she's leading the witness. Obviously, she wasn't in Illinois. She's now telling him where she was. This is leading. It's so super inappropriate.
It's leading.
Judge, I'm going to object to any speaking objections.
Well, that's true. It is a speaking objection also, so Counselor, just move on without the leading questions, please.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm sorry. What Adam? I'm sorry. I'm not LDS. So what was it?
It was called Adam on Diamond, and apparently it is affiliated with the LDS Church as some kind of historical site.
Okay. And where is that?
That is in Missouri.
Okay. And do you have information that Lori Vallow went there?
Yes.
Do you remember what date Lori Vallow went there?
Well, she was, I know she was there on the 9th.
Okay. All right. Let's move. Now, did you also turn over the location data records for both Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, and Alex Cox to the CAST unit?
Are we referring to these particular dates? Or?
No, any dates.
Okay,
generally
yes.
at Lubin.
All the returns that I had were given to the CAST unit.
Okay. So other than the electronic and data search warrants you did you participate in any other interviews or evidence gathering in this case?
Could you maybe reformulate that question?
Sure. Other than the electronic and data searches and search warrants you did you participate or did you do any other interviews or evidence gathering in this case?
Yes.
Okay. In December of 2019, did you go to Springville, Utah?
Yes.
Okay. Who did you speak with there?
I spoke with Tammy's parents and sister and brother-in-law.
Why did you guys go there and speak to them?
Well, again, this was fairly early on in the investigation, and we were just still looking for clues of where these kids were. And so we were just trying to exhaust every avenue, anyone who would have any knowledge of the kids.
Okay. And in January of 2020, did you participate in gathering any evidence related to hotels or motels?
Yes.
Okay. And did you gather information related to Hampton Inns?
Yes.
Okay. And those have previously been admitted as business records. And were you able to get records from Hampton's Inn?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get information from any Motel 6s?
Yes. Motel 6 in both Rexburg and Rigby.
Okay. And what did those records show?
It showed various stays in September and October.
Okay. In Rigby and where?
Rexburg.
Okay, thank you. Now, were you also able to obtain any copies of Lori Vallow's wedding to Chad Daybell?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be handed State's Exhibits 61A through 61G. Actually, there should be. I'm sorry, through 61H. Here you go. Your Honor, do you need the State to approach?
No, we have courtesy copies up through F, but we don't have G and H.
Okay, we'll make sure you have them, Judge. Could you give me copies to the judge? It's courtesy copy. And they are courtesy copies.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Judge. I just want to make sure you had them. Sergeant Stubbs, what are these?
These are pictures, if you will, hard copy pictures of digital pictures taken off of a PNY USB flash drive.
Okay. And these are specific pictures of what?
Hawaii, the wedding of Lori and Chad.
Okay. Do you know the date of that ceremony?
Yes,
What was the date of that ceremony?
November 5th, 2019.
Okay. And states Exhibit 61A through 61H, are each of those images true and accurate copies of the images of that wedding you found on a hard drive?
Yes, I made these copies.
Yes. Move for the admission of States Exhibit 61A to 61H and request permission to publish.
Any objection?
May I have one here?
You may.
All right. So it looks like 61 A and H, A through H are photographs of Lori and Chad. Is that correct?
A through H? Is that what you're
Believe.
saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And how is it that you came in contact with these photographs?
So these photographs were found on a flash drive that was seized. At the time, Lori and Chad were talked to in Hawaii from their vehicle.
So it was seized from their vehicle.
Correct.
Okay. And you were there when they were seized?
I was not.
Okay. How did you come into contact with these?
The digital evidence was packaged, chain of custody, and then returned to us in Rexburg. At that time, a warrant was written for the devices.
Okay. And where is this chain of custody? Is it part of it's not part of these exhibits, right?
No.
Okay. So you're all objected. Well, you know what? I'm not going to object.
Okay. Then Exhibit 61A through H
Yes, Judge.
are admitted, and they may be published if you'd like.
Okay, let's make a record. What do we see in 61A?
This would be Chad and Lori, November 5th, 2019, on the beach in Hawaii at their wedding ceremony. If I may just add, so I don't have to do it on each one, each of these photos was taken with a Canon EOS Mark III camera.
And how do you know that?
Because this is a digital, this is a digital picture. All of our phones, all digital cameras and everything nowadays have what's called XF data that is associated. XF? EXIF? Data, and what it is, it leaves a digital footprint on each of these photos. If you look at the details of the photo when you're looking at it with, say, a computer or forensic software, you'll be able to see date, time, what kind of camera took it, so forth and so on. A lot of times it'll even give you GPS coordinates and so forth and so on.
So on the images and that you saw the camera data associated with each of these on the device that you had a search warrant for?
That's correct.
What is 61B?
This would appear to be Chad and Lori in Hawaii again. What I believe is standing in front of the Mormon LDS temple.
C?
Again, another picture at their wedding ceremony on the beach in Hawaii.
Okay. 61D.
This would be a picture of Chad and Lori's hands. They're both displaying wedding rings. It appears wedding rings made of or containing malachite stone.
Why do you say that?
Because of my earlier testimony where she, in August, was looking up wedding rings made of malachite.
And malachite's a green stone?
Correct.
Sixty 61E.
Again, another wedding photo on the beach of the two of them in
Okay.
Hawaii.
And in this picture, can you see their hands together and see one of their wedding rings?
Yes. Also, you could see that same ring in C as well.
This is just a different view of.
It's a different view, yes.
61F.
Picture of their wedding ceremony along with the preacher who conducted the ceremony.
$61G.
It appears sometime during the ceremony, their Lori and Chad's celebration of their marriage.
And 61H.
Again, another photo sometime during their wedding ceremony of the two of them kissing on the beach.
One moment, Your Honor. I think I'm done. Let me check with counsel, if I may.
Very well.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Very well. Who will conduct cross-examination? Is that you, Mr. Thomas?
I will, Judge.
Very well.
Is the court wanting to take a break anytime soon, or are we just going to roll through till noon?
I think we ought to keep going, given that first break we had. That's all right.
Morning, Detective.
Morning.
You indicated earlier today that you had multiple trainings in forensic software. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you go through that a little bit for me? When did you? I'm sorry. Go ahead if you want, but I'm going to try to narrow down the question a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So when did you start your training in forensics as a detective or as a patrolman, or how did that work?
A detective.
Okay. And when was that?
Around 2010 when I started specifically going into computers.
Okay. And that's when you started doing work as a detective in Rexburg isn't a huge city, so how much of this particular type of work is your detective work as far as what you do in Rexburg?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, you're asking what percentage is devoted to this kind of work? Is that what you're saying?
Probably a bad question. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at.
So I would say Probably about 50% of my work is dedicated to this, if not slightly more.
Oh, okay. And so I'm sure probably about 50% of your training is dedicated to this type of work?
At least.
Okay. And so let's just talk about in the last, say, year, what kind of training have you done as far as forensics goes?
Taken a couple smaller online courses, some brief updates on software additions.
Which ones?
Would be Celebrite.
Is that the only one?
That's the only one within the last year that I've done updates with.
Have you had prior training on Celebrite?
Yes.
Okay. When was that?
I don't remember exact date when I started using Celebrite, but I have used it and done updates and certifications for several years.
What types of certifications do you have in the forensic, cellular, forensic, electronic type of realm here?
I've had, well, Celebrite, certified Celebrite operator, CCO, Celebrite certified physical analyst. I've had trainings and certifications in access data, magnet forensics.
What's magnet forensics?
It's a computer, cell phone software, if you will.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of what you do is you take devices and you pull off information from a particular person's life from that device. Is that right?
Restate that, please.
When you take a device that you've gotten from a search warrant or whatever, you're looking for life information about that person's life, right?
Well, all information that the device would store.
Okay. But when you're looking at specific, okay, I'll move on. And so these electronic devices that you looked at in this specific case, there were a number of them, right? About 100, almost 100?
I don't recall the exact number, but as I said earlier, a lot of these devices, the data was obtained through warrants and so forth, was split up amongst different people to analyze, if you will.
Mm-hmm. This is a massive amount of data, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you weren't able to analyze all of the data yourself?
That's correct.
Okay. You specifically indicated that on the return of search warrant 2020-76 and 2020-77, those were geofences of Chad Daybell's home and Lori Vallow's home, is that right?
Correct, yes.
And in all of that data, the only person, I believe what you said was the only person that you found that had been to both Chad Daybell's home and Lori Vallow's home on September 22nd or 23rd or September 8th or September 9th was Alex Cox.
Yeah, the only one that we could see that shared all those locations, those dates, times.
Okay. So you couldn't tie Lori Vallow to those locations at those times?
Correct.
Okay. You mentioned some burner phones, and you said that those were phones that drug dealers use. You didn't think that Chad or Lori were using drugs, did you?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. They weren't drug dealers to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
So burner phones aren't just for drug dealers, they're for just regular people that either can't afford a phone plan, or there's several reasons for people buying burner phones, right?
There could be, yes.
All right. Exhibit 157, we talked a little bit about that being a USB thumb drive that had the Google searches on it. Is that right? Search history?
The search history for, who are we talking about?
Well, you tell me. You're the one that said adamantly that you knew what 157 was.
Okay.
Tell me about 157.
Do you want to show me 157 again, please? Sorry. Okay.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about 157. What's on there?
That's the search. That would be the Google data from Chad Daybell.
And this includes the search history?
Yes.
And you indicated that there was some significance to a search history about what was the wind direction going to be the next day or whatever?
Correct.
Okay. And you work in Rexburg. You indicated that you've worked there for quite a number of years?
Yes.
Okay. During the seasons, the wind usually moves in one direction, right?
North or south, usually, yeah.
Okay. All right. So why was it this specific day, this specific search so unusual to you?
Because the user of the account was looking for the wind direction for the 9th. At no other time did I see the user of this account inquire about the wind direction at any other time.
But anything that you gather from that would be speculative, right? I mean, you're just speculating as to why he might be looking for this.
Sure.
Okay. Do you know what size ring Lori Vallow is?
I don't.
Okay. You made some issue about the search history on August the 25th about the user was looking for wedding rings or malachite wedding rings. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And there were specific sizes that they were looking at. Is that right, or am I wrong?
Looked for a size 4.25 and 11.5.
Okay. And you don't happen to know what size ring Chad Daybell wears?
I do not.
And you don't happen to know what size ring Alex Cox wears?
I do not.
And you don't happen to know what size ring Zulema Pastinez wears?
No.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thomas. Does the state have any redirect examination?
Very briefly, Your Honor.
Very well.
Defense counsel asked you about your training and your experience in Rexburg. Are you also part of regional efforts on addressing crimes associated with the Internet?
Yes, I am part of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force for the state of Idaho. I work closely with the Attorney General's office here in those matters, and also I work closely with the Department of Homeland Security in these type of investigations.
So in your work as part of these task force, you do some of the record collection analysis and review for multiple agencies.
Yes, I do analysis for a lot of our surrounding counties and others that would pertain to the task force.
And defense counsel asked you about burner phones. Are they commonly used in situations where people are trying to hide their involvement in criminal behavior?
Yes.
Are they commonly used in situations where people are trying to hide their connection or relationship to people from other people in their lives?
In my experience, yes.
And in the search history accounts where you saw a search history for malachite and malachite wedding rings, do you remember that search history defense counsel asked you about?
Yes.
Okay. That was associated with the Lori for Style at Gmail account, correct?
Lolly Time Forever.
Lolly Time Forever at Gmail.
Correct.
And the owner at Google of that account was who?
Lori Vallow.
Now, in the area surrounding Chad Daybell's property, if you know, what is, are there neighbors north of Chad Daybell's property?
The neighbors that would be to the north of the property would be, in an estimate, would be at least a quarter-mile away.
Okay. And so would people to the north be the recipient if the wind is blowing from the south or southwest?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith.
May I recross just one question?
Go ahead.
Sure. So you indicated that you had reviewed some data from lollytimeforever at gmail.com and a whole bunch of others. In any of that review of any of that data, did you ever see anything from Lori saying, let's kill the kids?
No.
Did you ever see anything that said, will you kill my kids?
No.
Anything that said, let's kill the kids?
No.
Anything remotely akin to any of that?
Object has been asked and answered.
Overruled.
Anything akin to any of that?
For this account, no.
Any of the accounts?
I wouldn't know on some of the other accounts because I didn't review those.
Okay, but you were part of the team that reviewed them, right?
Right.
Judge, I'm going to object, ask and answered, and other officers are going to be testifying as to the findings on those other accounts.
I'll overrule the objection.
So based on anything that you've seen, is there anything in there where Lori had texted or emailed or any type of data that says anything about wanting to kill her children?
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right. That'll conclude the examination then of Detective Stubbs.
Yes, Your Honor.